Now, video games love presenting the player with choices. Whether moral or practical, a lot of games present you with 2 or more options for what you get to do or where you go to next, and usually choosing one locks off the others for whatever reason. But some of these decisions are incredibly difficult, and some of these incredibly difficult decisions, once made, well, you immediately regret it. So let's have a chat about them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 hard video game decisions you immediately regretted. Number 10. Choosing a starter Pokemon. Kicking off with the choice that every gamer has made and then immediately regretted, choosing a starter Pokemon. Picking a starter can be a problem even when all 3 options are great, because you're always left wondering what could have been with the other 2. But what adds to this are 2 things. Firstly, depending on which game you're playing and which starter you choose, you may find yourself at a disadvantage with the first couple of gyms, depending on what type they specialize in. Secondly, even if you pick the best starter Pokemon to have the smoothest experience possible in the first several hours, it is tradition at this point that your rival will gravitate towards whatever your Pokemon is weak to, giving the player a hands-on lesson in the type system. This shove you into the deep end approach has been a series tradition since the beginning, making sure the player knows right off the bat that it doesn't matter what type of Pokemon they have, because there's a Pokemon out there that can technically beat it easily. Number 9. Aiding the Stormcloaks. Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. When you first play Skyrim, the idea of working with the Empire is a bit of a difficult sell, to say the least. I mean, the game literally starts with them trying to cut your bloody head off. What logical person would then respond to with, "Hey, you guys hiring?" Well, if that logical person then proceeds to try and join the Stormcloaks, they might amend their earlier opinions somewhat, mostly on account of the Stormcloaks being bigoted, xenophobic monsters. The game makes no secret about the Stormcloaks' plan for the other races of Skyrim should they prove victorious. If you're not a lily-white Nord in Ulfric Stormcloak Skyrim, you're essentially a second-class citizen at best. Now, the Empire is far from being perfect, especially since Ulfric's one actual valid point is that Thalmor are quickly seizing control of it with every passing day, but following the Imperial storyline shows that the Empire isn't taking this lying down, as Ulfric is actually convinced. And also, you know, they aren't xenophobic monsters, so yeah, they've kind of got that in their favour as well. Number 8. Making Lockhine a Grey Warden. Dragon Age Origins. Throughout Dragon Age Origins, you constantly have to contend with General Loghain McTeer, making your life more of a living hell than it already is by trying to straight up murder you. Convinced that this area does not need the Grey Wardens to defeat the Darkspawn Horde, he leaves them all to die at the hands of the beasts at the beginning of the game, and then spends the rest of it trying to finish the job with you and Alistair. So when you finally get him at the end of your sword, it's a shock to say the least when the idea is put forth of making him into a Grey Warden. I mean, why not, right? Given that becoming a Warden shaves down your lifespan to just 30 years after joining, and every second of those 30 years will be spent in deep dark caves fighting an endless horde of terrifying eldritch zombies, it's basically the same as killing him. Plus, with the Wardens being the only ones able to kill the Archdemon at the head of the Darkspawn Horde, it only makes sense to have more than 3 Wardens to throw at it, right? However, the problem there is that you're stuck with just 3 either way. Recruiting him makes your best buddy Alistair quit the party and flee the country in sheer disgust at your actions, costing you a valuable party member in the process. Number 7. Accepting Kara's offer. Undertale. The genocide route of Undertale is grueling, tedious, punishingly difficult, and bleak as all hell. And at every point, the game basically hands you opportunities to stop doing this. Hell, you just have to not go out of your way to viciously murder every living creature in the underground to avoid this route, but if you do, you are given one last out at the very end. You see, at the very end of all of this, after you've absolutely positively killed every mother lover in the underground, you are greeted by the mysterious Kara. They offer you a way to go back and do it all over again differently for the low, low price of your immortal soul. Now, obviously, this offer is some absolute BS, but you'll find that saying no just causes Kara or Chara to leave for about 10 minutes before coming back and making the same offer. Your only choice is to say yes or turn the game off and never come back. It's a very, I've come to bargain Dormammu situation. What makes this hard is the same thing that drove you to the genocide route in the first place: curiosity. I mean, you have to see what happens, right? Well, what happens is that the game plays like normal all the way through to the ending of the true pacifist route until the very, very end when Frisk walks up with Kara's eyes. Okay. Number 6. Chopping off Lee's arm. Telltale's The Walking Dead. Telltale's magnum opus The Walking Dead, although being easily the peak of their storytelling abilities, also suffered from some of the developers' biggest weaknesses. That being that choices don't often carry nearly the weight that the game tries very hard to convince you that they do, and nowhere is that more obvious than the infamous scene where Lee has to chop off his own arm. Now, without spoiling too much, Lee ends up infected via a bite to his arm, and the only way that he's going to avoid becoming a zombie is if he removes the source of the infection, and does it pretty quickly. You are then presented with the choice of either toughing it out or biting the bullet and chopping off his arm. At this point in the story, the game has thoroughly trained you with a desperate times, desperate measures mentality, so most players will likely just go ahead and chop off the arm. But the kicker here is that it changes absolutely nothing. The ending is unchanged regardless of your choices, so cutting off Lee's arm is technically completely pointless. Number 5. Helping John. Infamous 2. Infamous 2 concluded the story of Cole McGrath with him facing off against the mysterious, all-powerful beast that is teased at the end of the first game. The beast is revealed to be FBI agent John White, who seemingly died in the first game when the ray sphere exploded. Instead, it's turned him into the most powerful conduit on the planet, and he's intent on using these powers to help conduit kind. Unfortunately, in this case, helping conduits means humanity, has to die. John has the means of curing the plague that's ravaging America throughout the second game, but only for conduits, and doing so requires killing a lot of humans just to cure a single one. And just to add the cherry on top, Cole learns that the big plot MacGuffin that they've been powering up to fight the beast with, the RFI, is essentially a no more mutants button for conduits, so killing the beast means wiping out all currently living conduits on the planet. Kill millions to save billions, or kill billions to save millions. This is the final moral choice of Infamous 2. Now, choosing the evil option always makes you feel like an a-hole basically, but Infamous 2's final evil choice just rubs your damn face in it, as you have to kill all of your friends who choose the other side, including your best pal Zeke, who you have to manually shoot with lightning until he finally stays down. Number 4. Destroying the genophage research. Mass Effect 2. Now, one of the key plot points in the background of the Mass Effect trilogy is the inhumane bioweapon used to end the war with the Krogan, the genophage. The genophage doesn't kill anyone currently alive, but it did heavily cut down the rate of successful births of Krogan infants. This frankly monstrous method of population control is brought to the forefront in Mass Effect 2's companion Mordin Solus, the doctor who created the genophage. His past comes back to haunt him in his personal mission, as a pupil of his is reported to be experimenting on Krogan women. In the end, it turns out that these brutal experiments are meant to cure the genophage, and he's gotten very close. After subduing him, you're faced with a choice: keep the research and have Mordin continue working on it, or destroy it, either to keep the Krogan down or out of disgust at the inhumanity that birthed it. Even if you destroy the research for the latter reason and then convince Mordin to start his own research into the cure, you're still left feeling very morally murky about your actions. And it definitely doesn't help in Mass Effect 3 when Rex confronts you about it and says that keeping the research would have had all that horror actually mean something. Number 3. Amita or Sabal. Far Cry 4. Now, these last 3 entries are choices that suck no matter which one you choose, and there is no better entry to kick off this cheery subject than the infamously screwed up ending of Far Cry 4. Now, if you don't know about / were too impatient to wait for the secret ending of this game and chose the violent revolution over Crab Rangoon, you're eventually forced to choose between the 2 resistant lieutenants, Amita and Sabal, one of whom is going to lead the Golden Path once Pagan Min is forced out. Now, one of them has new ideas but is hot-tempered, the other is very wise but very traditional, and you may find yourself slaving away over these choices, as both seem like good picks for rebuilding this area. Well, don't bother, because you know what? They both suck in different ways. Sabal, as it turns out, is a religious zealot, while Amita is a child-kidnapping tyrant. Choosing either one and killing the other means replacing one dictator for another, and the game ends on that note. So this is what you get for saying no to Crab Rangoon. Honestly, who even does that? Number 2, a high price to pay, Starfield. Now, Bethesda games don't really like to hurt the player of their own accord. I mean, sure, choosing this or that side in the latest faction conflict will definitely have consequences, but you still have to choose that first, being well aware of what's coming next, and even then, Bethesda players are pretty good at cheating the system. And then Starfield comes along and puts its foot down and says, no, you're losing a companion, now pick one and deal with it. The main story mission, High Price to Pay, sees you and your companions separated just as the main villains finally make their move. The game will cheekily separate your 2 most favourite favourite companions that are determined by affinity level and stick you with one and have the other be attacked by the bad guys. You'll hear that they've been heavily injured and maybe have minutes to live, but the bad guys are also coming for you next since you have the big important plot MacGuffin. You then have seconds to choose between going back to check on your friend or lover and leaving your other buddy to fend for themselves, or staying to protect the MacGuffin, leaving them for dead. And they do die, make no mistake. Whichever one you choose, the other dies. No ifs, no ands, and definitely no buts. And number 1, choosing which of your friends to die. Wolfenstein The New Order. But you know what? At least in Starfield, the choice was mostly out of your hands, and at least you don't see the death of whoever you've abandoned. But Wolfenstein The New Order, on the other hand, well, the opening act of this game sees D-Day end in total disaster, and with BJ and pals being captured by the sadistic General Death's Head and his super soldiers. He then offers you a choice. Which one of your buddies gets to die in the most horrific, painful way imaginable? And don't worry, he'll give you all the time in the world to choose, standing there patiently however long it takes. You cannot advance the story until you pick either Fergus or Wyatt to die, and Death's Head wants to make sure that their death is on you. Whichever one you pick, he then makes you watch as he subjects them to one of the most gruesome, torturous death scenes in gaming history, all while you are fully aware that you did this to them. Whatever choice you make, you are immediately made to regret it with every fibre of your being. I mean, what else could top this list, right?